Hi everybody. So this morning I am going to be canning some chicken. I've already got a video on that, so I'm not actually going to be showing you a step-by-step on how to do chicken. So while I'm doing that, I'm going to be showing you a few basic and beginner type tips, the basics of pressure canning. I'm not going to be showing you a step-by-step on the specific food. It's just kind of some of your basic, what is a pressure canner, what can you use it for, what are the things that are on your pressure canner, and how does it work in general. I'm going to just bring you over here. This is my Presto pressure canner, and it will do quarts, and it will do a 2 stack of pints. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to give you a closer look at this. Now, if you have a different pressure canner than this, that's okay. The basic parts are generally, they all have the same things, and the basic principles all are the same. Just when you get your pressure canner, make sure and keep and read your instruction manual, because there's a reason it's included with your pressure canner, is because it will tell you how to use it really well. It doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be scary. You just have to know the rules for how it works. And then it's easy and it works really well, and it's a nice tool for your kitchen. All right, so my Presto's lid looks like this. And on the Presto, as with all canners, there is going to be a fail-safe plug. Everybody's heard stories about their great-great-grandma knew someone who blew up their kitchen. That is not something that really will happen anymore because of this little guy right here. This will actually pop out if the pressure gets too high, and so you don't have to worry and be scared about your pressure canner blowing up. Now this is where this is your vent, and this is where your pressure gauge, your weighted jiggler. This right here is the little valve that when the pressure builds up inside, it pops up and that blocks it from coming out. So when you have put your weighted gauge on here and it builds up to the pressure that you want to do, it wouldn't be able to do it without this little guy right here, because when it's down, it's actually open. So steam, air, etc. will escape. But when it pops up right here, it actually plugs it. Let me give you a look at the other side. So this is that gauge on the bottom side, and when it's flat on the outside, it's actually open on the inside. But as the pressure builds up on the inside, it'll actually push it up and seal it so you can get that pressure that you need. And then also on the inside here, you'll see Prestos have a rubber gasket. If you bought an All-American, they actually don't use a rubber gasket. You just actually put a little oil to make the seal, which is nice because then your gasket you don't have to have replacement gaskets. And then this is the gauge. And as you can see, it reads your pressure on the inside. Every year, if you're using this to measure your pressure, you have to get it calibrated. If you have an extension office near you, makes it really easy. You can also mail it in. I find it a lot easier to use a jiggler, which each brand of canner will have their own weighted jiggler. But what it is this little guy here, instead of this one that it comes with that just plugs your vent at 15 pounds of pressure, this one actually is adjustable. So instead of using this one to just plug it and then reading it by this dial that you have to have calibrated, if you have one of these jigglers, or the kind that come with the All-American, is round and it's almost about this size, and it has the different pressures on it and just the numbers, and then you put that hole over. But the Presto one comes as 5 pounds, 10 pounds, and 15 pounds. So if you have a jiggler, then you don't have to calibrate this every year. You can just go by this. Then you don't have to deal with this at the beginning of every canning season. You can just go with your jiggler and put the weight on that you need for your altitude. Now, as I said, my Presto will do 1 row of quarts, which it fits 7, and these are quarts, or it will do 2 rows of pints. If your pressure canner is able to do a double stack of cans, you are going to need a separator. Now, they regularly come with just one for the bottom, so you'll have to get another one to go in between your stacks, because then when you have all your cans in there and you put this on, then the pressure that's on your lids and rings will be appropriate and not have any heavy points to make it not seal or siphon. So here's my bottom layer. This is how and that's how you put in your separator. And as I said, you do that so that when you put your other jars on, they're not putting weird pressure on any part of the sills underneath. And as you can see, your regular mouth jars and your wide mouth jars are a little bit different in height. So another tip is when you are putting your jars in, put jars all of the same height on the bottom, and then if you have some odd man out jars, make sure and put them on the top. It won't matter if they're uneven on the top, but it will on the bottom because it'll make your divider not sit right. Now there are Prestos that are the same except for they won't do that double stack, and they're just a little bit cheaper than this one. But I feel that if you are going to go ahead and spend the money, it's worth spending just a little bit more to get that double stack, just in case you ever wanted it. It cuts down your batches by a lot. Now, as far as your jars go, I just brought these up because I'm going to be canning some chicken today. So these are all already have been used jars. And one of the nice things is you get to use them over and over and over. There's pints and quarts are the most common. And there is regular mouth and there's wide mouth in both sizes. And as you can see, the difference is about that much. It doesn't matter if it's wide mouth or if it is regular mouth. Both will work. But sometimes you'll want a wide mouth just because your product is easier either putting in or coming out. With chicken, it is easier in your pints to get the chicken out of this rather than this, because with this it's just straight up and down. So when you flip it over and shake it out, it's easier to get it out than when you have this curve here. I don't know if you can see how that curves in. It might be a little harder to get it out. You'll have to use a spatula or something, but it still works. It's still the same product and you can still get it out. You just have to use an implement to get it out. And as you can see, I mix and match. It doesn't matter. When you buy a new case, a brand new case, they will come looking more like this with your lid and your ring on them. It is recommended to only use these lids one time. Reusable lids are available, and if you give them a try and love them, use them. I do have some. I'm not using any of them today, but reusable options are nice, and they're especially nice to have in your backups. And every time you do a new jar, you need a new lid or a clean reusable lid. But your rings and your jars are infinitely reusable as long as they are not chipped. The jars, you'll want to make sure every time you use them to run your finger on the top to make sure there's no chips in them, because then it won't seal, because your gasket won't have complete coverage and then it won't be able to suck and vacuum inside. And your rings are reusable until they are either bent or rusted. Now, a good place if you don't want to buy flats and flats because of the price, look at your secondhand stores, garage sales. As long as they don't have any chips and you can look at them and they don't have any cracks, they are still good. Even if they're 20 years old, if they don't have chips and they don't have cracks, they are good to go. Some of the cans that I have are actually my grandmother's, and they still work fantastic. One final tip for beginners is on your cool down process. Once you've followed your approved recipe to the point where it said and pressure canned it for the many minutes it's supposed to be at the appropriate pressure for your altitude, you want to turn off your heat and let the pressure come down naturally. You don't want to take off your pressure gauge, because part of the cooking time that is calculated in how many minutes you have to do, part of that heating process that it has to reach that high temperature for a certain amount of time is actually during that cool down and pressure release process. And if you rush that, then your food will not be safe. You want to let it come down with your weight still on. Now, that being said, once it has completely cooled down and your little tab back here has dropped down so you know the pressure is completely out of your system, you can take this off. And then after that point, you don't want to just leave it and then let it cool down say for 24 hours before you take it out of here, because it will actually take too long to cool down, and the temperature inside here will be right inside of here for a long enough time that it can actually make there's some bacteria in food that won't be killed by the pressure canning process that will actually turn your food sour. It doesn't affect the safeness of your food, but it will make the product itself taste a little off, and you don't want to be going through all this work to not have a product that you want to eat in the end. So what I like to do is, after my pressures come completely down, I remove my weight, wait 10 minutes, and then I will undo my lid and just let it sit just a little askew for another 10 minutes, and then take my lid off, and then take out my product and put it on a rag. And you do want to put it on some sort of rag because your counter will be cold and the jars will be very hot. And you don't want to shock your jars because they can break. And that's and that's how I like to do it. And then I let them sit overnight and cool on the counter. And that's fine because they will actually come down to room temperature a lot faster than if you leave them in here where the heat is trapped and that bacteria that will turn it sour can do its thing. But when you bring it out on the counter, it actually counteracts that because it comes down a lot faster. Now, there are a lot of canning accessories that you can go into, but for starters and for basic, I feel like make your life a lot simpler, I would go with a funnel and a jar lifter. You can get debubbler and headspace measurer combos. They're nice to have as well, but if you can only buy a few things, I would recommend these two. I use them every canning session. This I don't use every time because sometimes I don't need it. My little funnel here, when I have it sitting on my can, this actually goes down 1 inch. And a lot of your recipes are 1 inch headspace. And so I don't end up needing this measurer here. And then you can actually use any plastic thing, any wood thing to be your debubbler. You could use a plastic or wood chopstick. You could use a plastic or wood fork or the end of a spatula. You just don't want to use metal because you can break your jars if you're not careful. But this is not, I don't feel so much a necessity as these are, because as I said, I use these every single time that I can. The jiggler I recommend, as I said before, because it's just a little less hassle of having to get your canner calibrated every year. And also you can hear this, the sound that it makes when it's at the right pressure and is jiggling. You can hear that sound without having to come in to read the little numbers on your gauge to make sure you haven't fallen. So it's easier to keep track of it without having to be quite on top of it as if you're using your weighted gauge. And then, as I said before, if you are going to be doing a double stack, you do need a second plate. But if you have those things, it is easy to get going, and just give it a try. It's not as scary as you might think. You can do it. There are lots of good recipes, lots of simple recipes that I recommend you start out with. Just simple and easy, and something that you actually like to eat. And you want to start canning and trying out things, but try things that you actually will eat, because it will make all your hard work feel worth it if you're actually using the food. Don't can it and then think you're just going to put it away and only use it if the power's out or an emergency. Use what you're making. It will help you rotate through everything that you have, which is something that you're supposed to do, but it also makes you feel that sense of accomplishment a little bit more when it's actually something you're going to eat. So, does your family eat canned chicken and things? Do you use it to make chicken salad? Do you use it in soups? Can some chicken. Give it a try. Just simple canned chicken. You don't have to put anything else in it except for the chicken. So the recipe isn't complicated, and you can just can it. Like I said, I have a recipe to do that. It's super easy. If that's something your family eats regularly anyway, do it yourself and see if you like it. Do you grow a lot of tomatoes in your garden? Can some tomatoes. Tomato sauce, diced tomatoes, just a simple recipe that you can try and get your feet wet before you try some of those complicated things. Try the simple things first and then you can build on it. That's the best tip I can give, is try simple first, then build on it. And don't be scared, just give it a try. It's not hard, you just have to follow your recipes and follow the rules and it's all good. Please like and subscribe and we will see you next time.